Not been on.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest today, who is a very unique leader. She is the CEO and founder of the Architects Club and an expert Salesforce architect. And she is a very passionate individual and is also the founder and CEO of Ladies Be Architect. Welcome, Gemma Blezard.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Gemma. How are you? And thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today.
It's my pleasure, honestly. I'm fine. I'm having a good day today. You just got me off a really good call as well. So yeah, feeling very positive and full of energy today, which is great.
That's awesome. Great to hear. And it's 6:30 in the morning here in San Francisco. So I'm starting my morning with a very optimistic note.
You really are,
Great.
aren't you? 6:30. For me, that's an unheard of hour.
Awesome. Hey, Gemma. So I wanted to start this conversation by, asking you more about your career journey and path. So tell us your career journey. How did you get to where you are today? Would love to hear, the story of your journey.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I started working with Salesforce in 2008 when I was just a little girly. I completed a business information systems degree at a small local university, and I chose a local one so that I could have better access to the tutors if I needed any help. So I came out and did that, and then the first job that I had was for my local fire service, and I was literally working with an access database. My job was integration, actually. I was making queries, pulling out data, putting it into a performance management package. And I did that for 6 months before I moved on to an exam board and helped them with statistics. So data was very much my background. My degree trained me in relational database management. It trained me in systems development lifecycle, project planning and control. With a little bit of French, randomly enough, but I really enjoyed the fact that I could use the degree to. I decided a long time, even before I started the degree, that I wanted to study something I could use. And IT wasn't even my best subject. My best subject was English, but I wanted to pursue a career in IT because I knew for a start I would actually find it quite successful. It was a growing area. So. And the way I fell into Salesforce was I started a job as a sales ops analyst, if you like. My job was to work with Salesforce. They were early adopters of this thing called Salesforce. And I loved the fact that you didn't have to install it on anybody's computer to use it, and that's the record you were looking at your desk in your office in Marlow was the same record that your colleague out in the field was using their phone to access up in Sheffield, so I just loved that. And I grew very quickly with it. I'm a very fast learner, and when I'm really engaged and enthusiastic about something, I tend to throw a lot of energy into it. So that's exactly what I did. And Salesforce was probably it was about 8 years old at the time, 8 or 9 years old. And so I had a lot of opportunity to go and assist other businesses who were adopting it. And I went into consultancy. Probably about 18 months I worked as an admin, living and breathing Salesforce every day, making sure everybody was updating their information. I was doing manual data updates and uploads, and it really helped me to learn and contextualize my university studies. And I wanted to go out and help other people with it. I was like, do you know what? This is great, but I'm very limited by business decisions here. It's all down to what the company's strategy and vision is, and I don't have any influence over that. I'd actually prefer to be an external person who comes in as an expert, knows about Salesforce, and can help them make decisions about it. So I went off consulting, and I did that for about 8 years. And I worked for myself as a contractor. I worked for IBM, Capgemini, and I even worked at Financial Force for 3.5 years with their professional services automation package. And in that time, the knowledge I grew was insane, and Salesforce grew so much in that time as well. And started this, I started pre-Trailhead. So when Trailhead came in, I was like, yes, everybody can do Salesforce now, really learn it and everything else. But then it also created some problems as well, because you'd go into somebody's org and be like, what did you smoke before you built that? So yeah, it was a natural progression from admin to consultant, from consultant to working with very advanced products at Financial Force, and that really helped me grow into the architect that I am today. Because when you're working with a managed package, you're at the mercy of design decisions made by other people, and you have to work around it. You learn how to bend things in Salesforce. And that is really ultimately how I became an architect, was just developing and actually starting to look beyond the Salesforce implementation and actually how it was going to deliver the value that it needed to do to the company.
That's amazing. From where you started to where you are, it's just so much of transformation and progress. This is so good to hear, Gemma. I had a question in mind. I think you answered that. I wanted to ask you why Salesforce in particular, what kind of interested you? But I think we got the answer for that.
I just loved it. You didn't have to install it on a computer. And back then you had to install everything on a computer. So
exactly. And everybody falls in love with the product. There's something magical about it for sure. So
yeah, I think it sells itself for sure.
exactly, right? Yeah. Another question I had on my mind is your aspiration and intent to create the Ladies Be Architect organization, right? So we talked about your journey. So it's very clear that how you emerged from where you started to where you are today. We got a very clear picture of that. So with the Ladies Be Architect organization, would love to understand what do you expect to accomplish from this, and would love to hear more about this in elaboration.
Ladies Be Architects was started because I was on a journey of certification, and the journey, I was like a woman possessed, if you like. Salesforce released all these certs while I was at Financial Force, and while I was working at Financial Force, I was so busy all the time, I didn't really have much time to do certifications. And then when I finished at Financial Force and went to Blue Wolf, I had a bit of spare time, which was great. So I started working through some certifications. I was really inspired by Blue Wolf's engagement program, which was called Prime, and it was all about helping people to progress themselves. It was like a gamified reward system, and I really loved. I loved that for motivation purposes. But when I was studying for these certifications, a few things happened. One was that, I'm an old school reviser. When someone says you've got an exam to do, I get out my notepad and I just write notes all the time. That's how I revise. That's how I was taught how to revise at school, was to read, and then was to write, and then read, and write and read, and write and read, and then the information would be absorbed. But I found myself going into the success community and looking for the architect group, and it was full of men, and they were all asking each other complicated questions with big developer-y words in them. And I was like, my God, if I put anything in here, they're just going to shoot me down. They're going to be like, what do you know about this? It just didn't feel like a safe place for me to ask a question. Yeah. And that's no reflection on Salesforce or any of the membership. It was just, I felt intimidated in there. And I wanted to create a space which wasn't just people like basically showing off how much they know. I wanted to create a space where there were I was like, where are all the women, first of all, because it was mostly men, but second of all, there must be some other people who actually want to get together and go over some of these topics and discuss them. And somebody said that the best way to learn is to teach, right? So the Ladies Be Architects became just a community group, really, which had the intention to encourage active learning and actively sharing and revising together and helping one another succeed, celebrating each other's successes, and making sure that it wasn't just a glorified message board, that people could actually get on the phone to each other, and that it was inclusive. And the most important part of the word inclusive to me was geographical location, because I'm UK based. I wanted to actually teach some of the topics, but make it easily accessible to anybody and in any time zone. So even if people couldn't join me live, I would then post up the recording on YouTube so that people in San Francisco, people in Sydney and people in Mumbai could actually still benefit from the content that I was producing. And it picked up a few followers. I think for the first session, we had 24 people who joined to talk about territory management. And then about a year later, we had about 4,000 followers across multiple platforms. And then I recruited a couple of co-leaders. So Charlie, I was trying to encourage people to take over sessions so that they weren't just having to listen to my voice all the time. And equally, it just gave everybody a chance to have a space where they could present and learn other skills like presentation skills and discussion and critical thinking. And lots of people just kind of latched onto it, and Salesforce really liked what we were doing with it. I recruited Charlie and Susanna to help me to go to some of the community conferences, because I can't be flying over to the States every 5 minutes to go to conferences and talk about architects and why they're important for projects and so on. And so really in a nutshell, it's a community. And at the moment, the study groups, we're still running them once a month. We're focusing on platform app builder. We've primarily focused on going over topics that are in the architect exams to help people study. But I suppose our strength as well is in taking some of these very complex topics like identity and access management, breaking them down into a format that's more easy to understand and speaks everyday language, and then wrapping them back up into the language that they need to know for the review board and what they need to know for the exams as well. So really it's an environment to collaborate, to celebrate, and to study together.
That's so amazing. And I love the concept that it's just kind of multiplying the effect, right? So you help one and one helps many. This is so good.
That's true. And that's why we invite men to join us. Everybody of any identity can join us. It's called Ladies Be Architects because it's ladies running it. And we ladies, when we see other women doing things, it gives us a bit more confidence. Like if she can do it, then so can I. I'm going to do it as well. So we've actually pushed up the number of female CTAs. We've pushed up the number of female architects as well. But we're trying to also emphasize to the lovely gentlemen out there who and you know, those who identify as non-binary as well, that it is a space for them. It's all about study. It's
exactly
just run by women.
This is amazing. And I know you also mentioned about the global concept of, you know, making sure you reach this concept globally, right? So would love to understand your perspective on the unique challenges women face in the field of architecture, because you worked with so many people across the globe, right? And what is your perspective and recommendations to the community to remediate these challenges?
Oh, wow. So there's the classic sexism that no one likes to call out, but it is so very prevalent and very true. When you work with a lot of men, there's a lot of egos involved. There's a lot of measuring going on. There's a lot of, I've got to prove my credibility because with all my certifications and my powerful masculine strength in the boardroom. And actually, what I've found is that overcomplicates things. Those perspectives tend to overcomplicate solutions. They tend to overcomplicate projects from time to time, and we're all guilty of it, men, women, non-binary alike, you know. But it is more, we tend to see it more often anecdotally happening with men towards women. And I find it really, really fascinating because actually tech itself is actually quite a young industry. And what I wrote, and some of my favorite men that I've worked with are the ones that say that actually that stick up for us, right? So I've had scenarios where I've been arguing with somebody or debating with somebody what's the best solution to prescribe for a client. They've had one view because XYZ justification. I've had another view because ABC justification. And in that scenario, what we actually did was present our pros, cons, and considerations to one another. And we ended up coming up with a really good solution ourselves between us, because once we'd had the chance to just create space for one another to get our points across, we were then able to say, right, okay, I understand what you're getting at now. And he said, yeah, I get what you're saying now. So how are we going to overcome this together? So it was once, and it was really, really valuable for us both, because he realized that actually it's not about proving yourself in your brand new job and making yourself look good to customer and boss alike so that you get promoted. It's actually about what is in the best interests of this customer. And even if whether you're admin working in a consultancy, your customer is always the end user. You always have a customer.
Yep.
So I suppose just the way that I've overcome that is to just remind people who the customer is and what's the importance of it. The biggest challenges, I suppose, is that solutioning side, and I think and I think just remembering to stick up for each other and help each other, and stick to that pure view that it is the user that's most important, not you and your job and your ego and
right.
Does that
Right.
help?
Yes, I'm just like thinking and relating how we can start applying that. That's amazing, right? So think at the best interest of the customer. Customer centricity is the principle. That's amazing.
And sometimes the customer doesn't actually realize what they're asking for as well. And so I actually also think that one of the other challenges is that we certainly, I've seen a lot of architects and consultants offer options to customers and say, right, well, you could do this or you could do this. And doctors do the same thing. As you may know, I'm quite poorly, but the doctors and consultants, they actually, our brains function in the same way when we're prescribing solutions. It's quite interesting. When I went for my plastic surgery, my surgeon said, here's option 1. This is what you would get, pros, cons, and this is what you'd have to think about. Option 2, blah, 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 blah. But option 3, da, 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 da. And I said, I can tell that you think option 3 is the right option. And he was just like, and that gave him the safe space to say, do you know what, I put money on it. If you went with option 1, you'd be back in here in a year. And I said, well, why did you tell me about option 1? Why don't you just give me the recommendation? And I could tell he was like bound by like the GMC code, which is you have to give all the options and make sure the patient understands them and stuff. You don't have to always do that as a Salesforce architect. Sometimes your customer will come to you and say, I just need a checkbox. When you're a good architect, you're asking that customer, who asked for that checkbox? Why do you want that checkbox? Who else needs to know about that checkbox? And why do you think it's a checkbox? So being able to say, this is, the strong, powerful words, I recommend you do this because X, Y, Z. If you don't do this, this will happen.
Pros and cons. Yep, absolutely.
Pros and cons and considerations. Whereas if you just go back to a customer and say, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could do the other. Customer's like, well, I don't know Salesforce. You know Salesforce. What am I paying you for if you're not going to tell me?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had another question on the architecture subject matter. So it's amazing that you're advocating and evangelizing for all flavors of technical architecture specific to Salesforce: data, application, platform, solution, everything, right? There's a business architecture component within the architecture umbrella.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah. And I'm a business architect, so I'm kind of passionate about this question. So what's your take on involving the business architecture component to evolve this into a holistic end-to-end offering, because business architecture is such an important top of the funnel component within the architecture world?
It's essential. It shouldn't exist as its own siloed work stream. It should be locked
within
everything else. I don't know if I'm a visual thinker, so I'm seeing streams: technical, business, enterprise, etc. What you build at the lowest level, that little field that you've just built is strategic if you've thought about it correctly. It rolls into a report. Decisions are made based on reports. Decisions are made based on data. Benefits need to be identified and realized. And the most successful projects that I've seen are ones where the company or the organization has really taken time to spend time with its users, to actually get immersed and do a bit of prototyping. They've spun up a scratch org and they've fiddled about with it. They've created some concepts, and they've tried and tested and got feedback from their users. And they haven't actually built requirements until they've done that. because all of those user requirements are going to flow up into your business benefits and your vision. And the way that I see the business architecture side of things, you're right, it is missing in many cases, because Salesforce are really good at running in and saying, have all the things, the shiny things, the marketing cloud, the Pardot, come and buy CPQ. And actually that's where I've seen the good projects is when people go, yes, okay, I'll look at CPQ, I'll look at marketing cloud, etc., but not yet, because we've got a roadmap and we've got benefits and strategies that we need to put in first.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can't do that without that business architecture. Now, historically, you just throw business analysts at it, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
Because
yes.
It's business process, it's change management, it's adoption, it is engagement and enablement of those individuals that need to use Salesforce. So many times I've put this, so I'm going to rant as well because I'm very passionate. So many times you put Salesforce in and you say, right, what are you doing to prepare your users? And they go, well, they know it's coming. I'm like, sake. Give me a business architect, please, who can just help me design this enablement program. And a lot of CIOs tend to see it as like the fluffy stuff around the edges. It is not. Your business has a vision. Your technology needs to support that vision and prop it up. And if it's not driven, sorry, Ran, if you're not driving that, if you're not driving those benefits through that technology, then what's the point? You're just setting a system up that no one's going to like and no one's going to use. And in 3 years' time, you're going to go, oh, I'm paying X grand a month for Salesforce and nobody's using it. We could get rid of that, couldn't we?
Exactly. Band-aid solutions and, missing bridge between strategy to execution, variety of challenges.
Yeah, I love how you called it a band-aid solution.
It's just so used to in the IT world.
I've gone into orgs where that's all there is. And you're like, guys, what's the big picture here? What's happening? Because Francis Pinder, a good friend of mine, said on a call a couple of weeks ago, he was saying that architecture is about slotting things in that is about things that are hard to change. Once you've got something in there that's hard to change, you've then got to think strategically and carefully about what else you then slot in around it. And I think that's
very well said. Yeah, absolutely well said. Yep, exactly. Awesome. And I do have 2 more questions that I want you to please help with.
I have time.
Okay, awesome. So you're in the UK. I would love to hear some of the unique opportunities for women in the UK tech market. The reason I want to ask you this is, want to understand what really works well and what are some of the unique challenges. The reason and the goal behind this question is, would love to take in any best practices that we can implement here in the US and elsewhere in the world. Don't tell me it's just the same problem everywhere.
Oh, it's all the same problem. Okay. I mean, this is the thing, right? Ada Lovelace, pioneer of programming. She was Lord Byron's daughter, believe it or not. And one of her mates made a machine and she made it talk, And for years and years, I mean, I live really close to Bletchley Park. It is about 5 or 6 miles away from here. And in Bletchley Park, the majority, I think it was about 50 to 60% of the people working at Bletchley Park during the war were women. Because it was historically programming and coding, ciphers, it was typing. There was a lot of typing and women were the expert typists. I think what's caused that shift is in the 1980s when IBM and Apple and everybody started to market their computers and computer games. When you're looking at a retail store and you've got all of the shelves and so on, where do you put the computing stuff? Do you put it with the dolls and the Barbie dolls, and the stickers and the LOL dolls? Oh my god! Or do you put it near the do you put it near the Meccano and the Lego? So I think that, and certainly as a millennial myself, growing up in the 90s, most marketing for computer games seemed to be aimed at men. And I was a nerd from age 10. I had a Commodore 64. I was playing games. I was on the computer doing Microsoft Paint from age 11. Grew up playing games, platform games, and using computers. But I did find that certainly growing up as a teenager and being a woman who geeked, if you like, we did get a lot of stick. We got a lot of stick from, I went to an all-girls school, and I got a lot of stick from the other girls, like, oh, Gemma's always in the computer room, and it's like, well, Gemma's going to get a decent IT job in the future, so But anyway, but yeah, so all of that to one side, I think women in the UK tech market, it's much louder here now. Everyone's talking about women in tech because we are so underrepresented. Everybody's talking about women in engineering because we are so underrepresented. Women in medicine, it's, you can't force women to be interested in certain topics. But what you can do is, for those women who are interested in getting involved in the traditionally more masculine topics, is it's all about safety, a safe space. We struggle with confidence, self-belief, self-esteem. How many times do you get up in the mirror, get up and look in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, or look at yourself on a Zoom call and think, my God, my hair looks so bad today, or I haven't done my makeup, or this eyeliner is better than this eyeliner, I've done it all the wrong way, my eyebrows are off, etc. We're very self-critical as a gender. And I think so that's why I think with any tech market, not just in the UK, what works really well is the creation of those safe spaces. So having awards ceremonies, to celebrate the successes of women in tech. And specifically, those are focused on more difficult projects, more advanced and complicated projects, where there's difficult circumstances, and showcasing those, whether that's through award ceremonies, through panel talks, conferences, all of those things. And I think in the UK and the US, we're getting a lot better at that. But I think the challenge as well is that there's an awful lot of lip service from companies. Yes, we are an inclusive employer. Look at all the things we're doing for women. And actually, I sometimes feel sorry for the boys, because they're like, hang on a minute, I know there's more of us, but I want to succeed. I want to feel safe in this space. I now have to be extra careful about what I say, because I don't want to offend anybody. So I think to get the best practices to overcome that is, we as women, yes, we need to shout out our successes and so on. We need to share our knowledge. We need to show that we have that technical depth, of technical knowledge and business knowledge. But we also need to be mindful that, we don't shove it down men's throats sometimes, and we don't get triggered too easily. Like, if somebody says something that they perhaps haven't thought it through properly, that we maybe consider, that we have a bit of emotional intelligence about it, and think, what kind of day has this guy had, and show empathy in that scenario, unless they're an absolute narcissist, of course. But from our lovely gentlemen out there who do support women, if you're a manager, it's not just about hiring more women. It's about creating a safe space for those women, and remembering that we do think slightly differently, that we do need a bit of praise in order to get going, that we don't necessarily have pissing contests like men do, and actually to encourage, where there are scenarios where perhaps a man isn't listening to a woman, is to actually be an impartial space there that supports what the woman's saying, educates everybody, and encourages. My best ally said to this other guy who was arguing with me and saying, well, what does she know? He said, actually, she knows a lot. She's got 8 certifications, and she's been doing this since 2008. And you've been doing this for what, 3 months? I think you should listen to her.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, Gemma. Thank you so much. And the last question I have for our audience is, what resources do aspiring architects have? Where can they start? Who should they be reaching out to? How can they succeed in this journey? Your organization is definitely one, but I'd love for you to open up resources and options for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So being an architect is a leadership role. It is a senior role. You need to have been doing Salesforce for a while. Just because you've got a fistful of certs, that shows me that you know how to pass an exam. I don't care. I've got people in my team who've got no certifications because they've been so busy working that they haven't had any time to do it. And they're exceptional architects. I also want to say to your audience as well, CTA Certified Technical Architect. It's a great certification to have. It gives you, it's very prestigious, but it's not the be all and end all. And it's not something that you should aspire to do within 1 year. Right, 1 year, I'm going to do I'm going to do the whole pyramid, all the certs, then I'm going to go for CTA. Great, it's a worthy goal, but give yourself time. Research and understand what's involved in these exams. For the CTA, you can pretty much kiss goodbye to your family for 4 months while you get ready for that exam. And your whole family needs to be on board with that. Your wife or husband, your children, you know, it will take a lot of your time, a lot of your energy, and a lot of your effort as well. But I would also say that how you can succeed is to actually, I've always said this, and that's to think about what projects are you working on right now? What certification topics does it touch? Let's say you're doing a big contact center implementation and you're involved in the design, or you're building out live agent, omni-channel, knowledge-centered support, etc. You don't have to necessarily be a Service Cloud certified to go and do that project. You could do that exam and study for that exam while you're delivering that project, and then it's fresh in your mind. And you're sat reading this exam question going, oh yeah, that was that's what happened the other day on my project. What did we do about that? And you can make use of more senior people around you who've been doing this a while. Ask them for their views. And every time you want to build something, consider the pros, cons, and considerations, not just from what you're building now. Don't just build stuff because it's easy to do now and I can do it within the budget and I can do it before the end of July. Think about how your solution will work in 5 years' time. Make it your business to understand the vision that your business has. Yes, there might be 4 or 5 pay grades above you, but it's really important for you to understand what the business vision, objectives, and benefits are. Because once you've got those in the back of your mind, you're sat there debating with yourself, right, I could do a workflow rule here, but actually workflow rules are going. Why don't I do process builder? Well, actually process builder's redundant now. We need to do it all in flow. Shit, I don't know flow. Where can I go and learn flow? So there's all these little threads and avenues you can go down. But I would also highly recommend getting familiar with architects.salesforce.com. That is the Architect Success Program. Started a couple of years ago. It's done by Salesforce. You may have seen Susanna St. Germain, our co-leader for Ladies the Architect. She's now a principal. She's now one of the evangelists at Salesforce talking about architects. And the resources that they're producing really help you to shape your design thinking, if you like. So there's value proposition canvases. There are real system landscape diagrams that you can use in Lucidchart that will save you a lot of time. And there's a lot of thought leadership on there about how to approach certain things. So that's my advice, is to familiarize yourself with the Architect Success team and what they're doing, and to actually integrate that into your daily approach with Salesforce. And number 3 is to think about how you can make Salesforce really, not just really good now, but really good in 3 years' time for other people who perhaps don't have the same skills as you have. So if you're a developer, for example, for you, it's really easy to write 3 lines of code and boom, this thing's been written. But for an admin who goes in and looks at these lines of code and goes, oh my God, I don't know what's going on here. How do I switch it off? And they don't understand the impact of switching it off, that it might break an integration, that it might break some automated process that produces invoices, for example. You know, it's really important to understand and see in your head how all these components and clouds fit together.
Right. Yes, it does. This is amazing. I love the elaborative answer, Gemma. Thank you so much. And that brings me to the end of our conversation. This has been so amazing, and it's a very unique conversation that I had with you. So I truly enjoyed it. Thank you for being here.
Same here. Thank you.